welcome back to the LJLOU. It is time for a blast from the past here with me, Midnight, and of course, Nightmare, as it's going to be a very fun match, I'm hoping for at least. CGA facing off against Sengoku.
And, we mentioned in the last kind of death segment we had, Sengoku turned up to play in that last week. It hasn't enough, sadly, for them. It hasn't been enough for them to secure a playoff spot. We knew our 6 teams heading into this week. Didn't include Sengoku, didn't include Burning Core. Sengoku, though, although they can't decide their own fate, can decide the fate of others. It's a kind of a sad situation from them going from Juggernaut match winners in 2020 into finalists, sadly finishing second place in spring, third place in summer, getting to playoffs again in spring, and not making playoffs at all in this one, but they will, of course, have to clench onto whatever ability to affect the standings they will do and come out with a strong performance, much like the narrative we were coming up for Burning Core as well. CGA looking to put this one to bed, though, and much like the other teams, giving themselves something to play around to push further up and potentially get tiebreakers.
And this is a very important match for the likes of CGA, and I hate to ruin it, but you're telling me that Sengoku Gaming is able to lead others to a power that they themselves cannot possess.
I have to say,
I'm sorry.
I have to say, after that one game versus Burning Core, yes, I would describe them as some evil mystic entity. After that game, potentially, they have unlocked powers which you cannot learn from a Jedi. Don't know where they learned it from themselves. I would severely suggest to anyone listening to this, though, do not go looking. Don't go looking for that source of power. Don't do it. For my sake, if not yours.
Yeah, it's a very unnatural. Okay, but yeah, so for CGA, this match basically gives them the chance to fight for those tiebreakers, right? We talked about when we talked about V3 and the likes of Axis, how important getting higher up in those tiebreakers are, and CGA currently, if I'm not mistaken, are sort of fighting at the bottom of the tiebreakers in the playoffs run. So if they want to take a serious run and not just be in survival mode, but actually be on the attack, they have to get this game over.
Exactly. I mean, potentially they're playing for a playoffs tiebreaker versus the Hawks, depending on, of course, how of course they do, and then beyond that, maybe getting to a point where they can, of course, push up even higher than that too, depending on the results of the rest of those games. So they could go. I think actually coming into this week, they could have gone anywhere between 3rd and 6th. I'm pretty sure they can only end up as 5th and 6th as of these games at the moment, but still a lot to play for. And I'm looking and thinking, okay, right, time to show that you're not the coin flip, that you can stack the odds in your favor. So the Council of Midwindu and Obi-Wan Chimera have decided. I've spent a long time trying to think of something better, and that's the best I got.
Yeah, I kind of respect that it is a little bit scuffed, though, considering I'm certain if someone goes over the way I originally said the quote, that I just bollocked the quote up beyond like comprehension. So, it'll work here.
We're here for entertainment, not quality all the time. Sometimes that's what you have to bring when the game won't give that to you. Much like, like I said, there's something to be said about maintaining this duo when we've been through the darkest of times. I believe we're ready to get into those pick and bans, though, so we'll take us through that.
Yeah, let's dive right into that one. See what anything surprising. And so far, the only I think oddity is maybe the Tahm Kench, but Tahm Kench, if anyone has dealt with Tahm Kench in their games, you know exactly why the Catfish is on the ban list again.
Yes, and so it has been played in support, played alongside, stuff like the center again. It has been played in top lane too. NT was always one of our premier Tahm Kench players. Actually, thinking about the other ones we had Ebby, who played in the top lane, and Rhino was one of our best Tahm Kenches down in the support role at the very least. Xin Zhao's off the table. A lot of our first pick flex picks are around too. The Draven being banned away. Remember that Gango has been playing since Season 4? He was a substitute for the Samsung White roster that won Worlds and was one of the most dominant teams of all time. He was a Draven main all the way back then, tangling with Imp in the practice rooms of Korean Season 4. Not going to get their hands on that. Nap is going to get their hands on one of their most successful champions this split, though, in the Gwen. On the other side, 2 of our power picks given over to Sengoku.
Yeah, and CGA now have to look at that, and we talked last game about taking the Thresh with the Aphelios to make up for Aphelios' weakness. CGA, I don't know what they're planning on rocking in bottom lane because the Varus is obviously off the table. The Misfortune, surely you lock in the Thresh here, please, for my sanity.
Well, I mean, it's another way to keep the Misfortune safe in its own way. And of course, if you land a hook into a flare into the box, that's plenty of CC to keep them in place for something like that ultimate to come through. Now, actually, a very interesting interaction with the Zoe locked in is because if you land the sleep and you put the Misfortune bullet time down, because it counts as periodic damage and not a single instance of it, doesn't actually pop the sleep. So for the full duration of that CC, you're eating lead.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just don't like the fact that CGA... Okay, I'm fine with Nap on the Gwen blind pick. That's fine. As you said, it's one of his most popular champions. I don't see why you look in the Zoe here, personally. I feel like you could go for that. I still think the Thresh is super high priority. Maybe I'm over-prioritizing it. But I just feel like blind picking the Zoe when Ramune... Yes, you're probably going to lock in the LeBlanc, which he did end up doing. But there are so many other things they could lock in there.
Potentially. So... one of the reasons for this is, you look down at those nameplates for CJ. We've got Nap, Kasin, and then it's Kaito, Milan, and Nation. So Nation's playing support, and this mid laner is a former Vayne Glory player, which is another MOBA. It used to be on mobile, of course. But this is a player stepping into this roster right now. I'm actually not sure on the entire reasoning for that, but Alchemy not playing today. So you look at Kaito stepping in on short notice versus Ramune, who has not had the best split. Definitely had some criticisms thrown against him for his return to pro play in the last couple of years. Not really been the level of player that he was in 2017, 2018, when he was dominating the LJL scene. LeBlanc was his pick of choice back in those days, though, and Zoe was his other one. He's very familiar with both of these champions.
Yeah, so hopefully mid lane should be... I'm hoping for an explosive mid lane, if I'm honest with you here. Seeing these two champions butting heads will be absolutely exciting.
Oh, look, your favorite.
Wait, but Braum's brilliant here because that's Misfortune. Why was Braum not banned? What?
So,
Braum just...
I'm not gonna lie. I think that CJ could have shot themselves in the foot here because you know it's likely going to be the Gwen solo lane, the Zoe in the mid lane, the Gwen in the top. Yes, the Gwen can go into the jungle, but if you've got double AP solo lanes, you need an AD jungle. You don't really have a choice about that. They banned away the Lee Sin themselves, put on the choice picks for that, and then Sengoku go, all right, cool, we'll ban away two AD junglers ourselves. We've already got ourselves a potential in the Viego on that other side. They lock in the Olaf, but well, I like Olaf in some ways, and maybe they're trying to say, oh, you'll go for a Diana, maybe that's something that which we can play against. It's not something I like without an Enchanter.
Exactly. And without any way to get Olaf into the fight, it's really worrying to see that locked in there. CGA kind of look like they don't really know what they're doing, and that's not the Enchanter we were looking for. It's good, but it's not going to get Cassin into the fight any quicker.
It feels like they were picking for themselves there, because, okay, so Paz is locked in the Jace, Viego goes into jungle, Jace goes into the top side. Rakan is a way to engage past the Braum shield, and is a way to make sure that the Aphelios is not able to just sit there all the time, right? And it gives you time for the Olaf and the Gwen to close the distance, it gives you time to have the follow-up damage of course, even the bullet time to start coming through. I don't think it's going to help out the Olaf very much. I think it's good for potential interactions. This Olaf feels like a pick kind of out of sorts here, though.
Yeah, and it always... Olaf needs to kind of... When you're putting an Olaf in a composition, maybe it's just me when I look at it, but you need to kind of build around the Olaf. Olaf isn't something you can just sort of slot into the team comp and it works out fine. Like, something like an Orianna can get away with that, but Olaf needs to be set up, and CGA's comp doesn't really set that up. Like, yes, you could say, oh, but the Rakan can slip in and get a really good engage going through, but that's not going to help the Olaf get in any faster. That's simply going to lock someone in place. You can still
it's
kite
not a
the
Karma
Olaf.
shield, it's not a Yuumi. You're absolutely right. One of the reasons we saw so much Olaf towards, the second half of 20... Well, of course, in spring when you had the Yuumi so powerful, but Olaf was great at farming very early and also stealing jungle camps and making sure that other farming junglers didn't really get to do the same level of farming that they were used to because they're under so much threat. Heck, even back in the last finals, we saw that Rascal Jess's first picking the Hecarim over and over would just get dumpstered by Muujin's Olaf, regardless of whether there was an Enchanter or not. There is a point, though, where Olaf just loses efficacy, loses potency, because they die on the entrance to the fight. They don't get to get in range before they start healing. If you don't have a shield, if you don't have an ability to get into that point, you don't get to have these crazy turnaround fights to the Olaf. And this composition is a prime example of what's likely to happen here unless there's a huge lead.
Yeah, and
But
for
the
those
time
who
is
like,
on.
oh,
The time is on.
yeah, the time is on, right? And I think the biggest way to highlight, well, why is this a problem for Olaf, is compare Olaf to the likes of an Udyr, who principally does the same job, right? You run at the target and get it done. The Udyr not only has a movement speed buff in his kit, with the passive, he has a shield to keep himself safe. So it's kind of like an Olaf and an Enchanter thrown into one kit for the likes of an Udyr. And we see Udyr was... Do you remember that? I think it was like last year. Udyr had that spree where he just sort of came out of nowhere and just dominated
It was
pro play because he
definitely in
was so
spring.
annoying.
It was mainly in spring at that point. We decided like, oh yeah, I guess like it is really hard to deal with. I mean, you do lack some of that, you know, that 1v5 potential, the ability to actually be a damage set from the jungle. Not that Udyr doesn't do damage, but it's you've traded some of that damage for the utility in some ways. So onto the Riv. Saw a bit of a tricksy level 1 coming from Sengoku. It didn't really lead to much. Nap just hops and skips over the wall in the top lane. River not going to be caught out by Sengoku's grouping of members.
And you can see, of course, players' runes up on the screen. Nothing too surprising across the board here, except maybe what Nap is bringing. But it's not the rune that's a bit surprising. It's the summoner spell. Typically, it's Ignite, but...
So what we've been saying from Gwen is that you just need combat stats, really. You don't really need a flash because of your E and the fact that your W allows you to dodge out defensively as well. You don't really need a flash to make sure you can fight most confrontations. Because it's a ranged matchup versus a phase rush 2 in this Jace, you are never going to close down that Jace unless you have that Ghost. Yes, you can have the Ignite if you just think you're going to be bashing heads with someone, like your Renekton's, like your Sets, like whoever really. But in this case, it's more damage efficient to be, okay, I can actually reach the target to do damage in the first place. The other thing I want to talk about, comment on the Misfortune. This means that it's going to be what Milan has typically done on this champion in terms of going for completely ultimate based. It's not going to be Honey's press the attack Misfortune that we saw earlier in the day. This is going to be potentially going towards something like the Eclipse even, and just looking to rake the bullets across the whole team.
And 9 times out of 10, I think, fine, like, I'm not a fan of Misfortune, but that's an acceptable way to go. I think that is going to be
a person, or
I mean, I hate Misfortune. I think Misfortune, like in that spree, I think like last year or 2 years ago, where MF was the AD carry to pick when lethality AD carries.
Yeah.
I just don't like the Misfortune. I think her kit just isn't great, but I understand that she can be strong, so that's fine. But this game, I don't like it for one reason, and one reason alone, which I said in Champions Select. NT has a Braum. Yep. If anyone has seen a bullet time slam into a Braum shield, you know it does nothing. And now Milan has gone for a build that requires the ultimate. I'm confused.
But it does sound really cool. That's the one thing. It's like firing the Lucian culling into the Braum shield. Like, it's probably the worst decision I could make, but it sounds really good at that point. Yes, there is something to say about that, which means that the game plan here is about forcing the shield out first, right? Because if you can... Well, I mean, Braum needs the shield to stay alive on the front foot. If you're trying to block out paddle stars, trying to block out bubbles, you get that first. Suddenly the Misfortune sits there and goes, okay, that is something which I can start really shredding through. Has to be a couple of extra steps involved, though. It's not quite as simple as just firing the ult across the team fight. One of the things that Aphelios hates is stuff that outrages him and stops him from just getting into range and really just kind of like wailing away on people. Gonna have to see how good CGA are at just denying Gango the team fight entry, because, I mean, his Aphelios has been disgustingly good over LJL history.
Yeah, and with the Braum to keep them safe as well, you know, Gango is more than happy to pick a fight if he's feeling confident. But talk about confidence in fights. Paz is going for something, but maybe, I think he realizes something's up. Yeah, instant flash, but Cassin not willing to let this go. Under turret, Nap not really able to help out there, and Cassin take it down low, but no victims other than maybe a flash, a ghost, or 2 flashes.
Doesn't get hit by the undertow, so no slow there. Ghost is popped by Cassin, by Nap rather, of course the flash on Cassin, and doesn't manage to get there in time. So while we were saying, yes, you need that Ghost to get into range, at that point we're actually following up on the play from that kind of range. Need even more than that. Didn't end up making that play particularly efficient after that point. At least Paz has to back a little early. It's not really much of an advantage of anything, though.
Yeah, because look what Paz is coming back with, the Serrated Dirk. Like, that's a fine amount. That's a fine item to come back on because depending on who you are, like I know some players don't like taking the tier onto the Jace. Personally, I think it's a brilliant item. I when I played Jace, it was always tier
I
first
think
item.
you need a Muramana second item because if you go for Eclipse Muramana, that's two items. It means that Jace is no longer just a you snowball, you get ahead in gold, and you use basically your weight of stats because your kit's so oppressed in the early game to keep relevant in the game. With a Muramana, it doesn't matter even if you get shut down early. You have that tier stacked up. Suddenly you fight everyone. You can kill anyone on the map at that point in an honorable 1v1.
Alright, that's a bit up, but yeah. So
I mean,
there was that. I mean, there was that spree. I think it was like a year or two ago where Jace's refused to take tier. This is before the item rework.
This is before the item rework, yeah. Because at that point, you could if you go for the tier early, you're not putting everything into lane. And a lot of what Jace was doing was like super bullying around stuff like Vladimirs and Orns and even Aatroxes, where if you don't have optimal stats, then things get really awkward. Paz is trying to knock him away.
Paz, run, buddy. He has the acceleration gate to get out of Paz. I think Paz is very lucky that he got out of that one alive, considering the position he put himself in for the fight.
Well, part of that is also the position which Nap put the W in as well, because you can see Paz kind of sat there like, oh heck, I need to get inside the mist to then knock them out of it, or knock them backwards. I can't just turn around and knock them away. Well, Paz that out. Sadly for them, couldn't finish off that kill. Paz does enough to gain enough distance. Crash walking topside now.
Yeah, Nap though knew it was coming, did see the Hallowed Mist coming through here, and Cassin is rotating up. The Undertow does connect, he could chain the slows, but Crash is too close to the turret, and Nap, low on mana, is not feeling it, and Cassin will just be super annoying more than anything else.
Damn, if only he had a ghost, that would have been quite helpful. Crash still had the flash, still had the Heartbreaker Strike. He was getting out of that regardless, seeing what Cassin could get for his efforts at that point. So we've seen a lot of topside pressure, trying to tilt this obviously quite swingy matchup. Not led to anything so far. Dragon went over towards Sengoku on the bot side, waiting for resets from bot lane to see if anyone will be bold enough to leave their AD carries alone and go towards the Herald.
But 9 times out of 10, like, if there was a Thresh or a Leona or a Nautilus, then yeah, I'd say that's a very real possibility.
How many times have we said those 3 champions in the same segment? Like, almost
they are so
they're
good.
really good, and we haven't seen them.
It's almost like when you have a tier list of really good defensive, supports that are also allowing you to play aggressive.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're really strong, but Braum is purely defensive beyond the level 1 that we talked about.
I mean, we have seen Braum try to play aggressive with flash ults and just out there like, okay, maybe Secret can do that. Everyone else needs a bit of work on it.
Yeah. And then the Rakan, I mean, sure, you can make a roaming play, but again, it's not nearly as impactful as if you had one of the aforementioned champions. So that does sort of, I don't feel like we're going to see Nahun nor Enti actually roam this game. I feel like they're going to be just relegated to bot lane duty.
So, one of the, I mean, Milan is very hard to push under tower. I think maybe if they think that Sengoku want to push in and reset, maybe Nation goes for an early reset themselves. It's so weird talking about Nation as a support. Maybe they go for an early reset, and they allow Milan just to clear out that wave on the turret using the hallowed wave clear ultimate. Nap wishes he could have wave cleared that from a bit longer distance.
Oh, a beautiful follow-up from Crash there, and that is a nice first blood as the shield denies the minion. Okay, slows down the minion wave killing.
Look, it's Nation roaming while Milan uses a defensive ult. Yay, we know what these players are going to do at this point. Milan's done this every time on Misfortune. They just kind of sit there. And they allow their team to go elsewhere and put pressure topside. Sadly for CGA, they don't get to take that Herald and then make a big inroad somewhere immediately. You're going to take that Herald. The question is, after that point, where are you going to get the most valuable gold out of it? I feel like it has to go onto Gwen, and I think it has to also go onto the Olaf too, because if Olaf, which it feels bad because like, oh, Olaf, you know he's going to fall off at some point. You'd much rather be on the Gwen or the Misfortune, so at least they're relevant in the game. But let's face it, if this Olaf is not ahead of the curve, they are worse than paper at that point. They're going to get shredded through. They're not going to be very useful. I think you need to get both the Gwen and the Olaf further ahead so they can start structuring the team fights in a way that CJ can play around the Misfortune.
And that's the problem of the Olaf. And again, in Champions, like we talked about how you can't just slot Olaf into your composition. You have to actually build something around him because he will fall off. And well, it looks like Casson is poking around the bottom side of the map. Of course, Scuttle Crab is available, so he can pick that up for himself and just, yeah, there we go. Typical Olaf. Really good base stats. And
Smack.
I think where this Herald drop is, as you mentioned, really, really important. But Sengoku, we're going to see it coming because the vision is, well, perfect. They see Casson on the, taking the chickens. No, he's just leaving the KFC and is probably going to go for the Krugs on the bottom side too.
I was about to call it 2020 vision, but then I realized that Gango would be on CGA because that's where he was in 2020. Haha, I can be funny.
Haha, jokes.
Funny.
Checkmate.
Oh gosh. So Sengoku have themselves comfortable gold lead. Of course, a lot of that is going to be going on to bot lane with that CS lead, and they're just very happy with how things are going. Is it enough for them to take a fight? Nation wants in.
Yeah, but NT is pretty tanky with the Braum Shield there, and very quickly CGA realized, no, we don't really have a lot of options here. Kaito is getting jumped on, but yeah, missing the chain from Une, you can't follow up after that.
No, what I was worried about in that bot lane play is exactly what we talked about in terms of the Braum being picked up. Yes, it's very strong versus the Misfortune if you got your shield cooldown. And use it a little frivolously. Use it, of course, it gives you the move speed as well when it's up, which allows you to disengage a little more effectively. I was thinking, Line could get a really good ult here. Gango turns around, makes sure that they're threatened. That doesn't end up being the case. So good awareness from Gango to know that the play was on. Teleports actually now both up for both top laners. Dragon going to be focused around on the bot side.
Yeah, but right now we are seeing, it looks like Sengoku might get priority to it though. Casson is still just poking around here. CGA seem to have their mindset on this objective, but they do not have the mid-wave priority. And CGA, they can't make up their mind what they want to do here. They can't tell if they want to go for the objective. We've been here before. This time the chain does connect. Amune feeling confident as Ignite goes down. That was a Moonlight Vigil that didn't connect, and this fight's a little bit scrappy. Nehun is already gone, though. Not used to the squishier support, as Milan on the backside will be forced to flee with the rest of CGA getting wiped from their face of the bottom lane. And well, Casson and Nehun were the main two victims, and the Dragon will soon join them.
So, of course, Sengoku get themselves a Dragon. Important win from that to get themselves, again, stacking up in the early game. It's still only 13 minutes in, but you're starting to see how difficult it is for Milan to play these team fights, even more so if he's going to get shut down here. He's having everything taken away from him. Gango with the angry Pete. I appreciate that. Milan might want to throw up a sad one in return, though, because he's really not finding it easy to fight. Going into the replay, I'll show exactly what I mean, because he's walking forward saying, okay, cool, maybe I can zone them out. Maybe I can look for something. But he's already at half HP because the next Braum Q lands. Luckily for him, it is actually a fellow missing the ultimate. But as soon as he thinks he's in a good position to land something, oh, actually that's Ramune, who's actually cancelling his position to ult. And then when he's trying to go forward again, he's like, oh wait, but the team fight's already lost. This Misfortune is finding it so hard to find safe ground to stand shoot on.
And that's the problem, for, quote unquote, with the particular build path that they've chosen to go for. Again, this is the build that is designed for the bullet time, right? This isn't a team fight Misfortune where she's going to be dodging around, throwing out the auto attacks, getting that extra love tap proc. No. It's all about the bullet time. And if you can't find a safe place to set up because NT's in position or Gango's threatening or Amune's threatening a dive with the LeBlanc, it really kind of feels like you're playing with a man down before the fight even starts if you just can't get that position.
I almost wonder if you go for a shield bow into a collector to halfway house it at that point. Be like, okay, I can stand, shoot with my ultimate, that's great, but I can also turn around with the crit that you get from that, and I also have, the ability to have a bit more self-heal. Obviously, this is a little bit results-based analysis. We're thinking, oh, maybe if Olaf was a bit more fed, maybe we could start running with a front line. That'd be a bit easier. Either way, though, it does seem like Gango and NT have had the number of Nation and Milan. Nation does have the ultimate again. Have to see if those bot laners get separated at some point, and they can, of course, get that combo in. Seems like Sengoku are the ones choosing where the plays happen, though.
Taking a look at this. Oh, give us a second. Never mind. Mid lane could be something fun. Ramune does get fallen asleep. Double chains, but yeah, Crash can't really reset Casson. I like that Casson's in the right place for it, right? Like, if they committed to that dive, Crash just dies immediately because Casson's around. So, CGA putting up a worrying game, honestly, here. Like, CGA is meant to be the stronger of these two teams based on what we've seen, and Sengoku they seem to own Summoner's Rift right now. This is a fantastic showing from one of our weaker teams on paper.
For sure, and well, sadly, of course, Sengoku not going to make playoffs. You're sat there going, oh, well and good that that's wrong. Sad we don't get to see them in postseason. But I mean, if anyone out there listened to our podcast, and if you didn't, some really good thoughts on there in terms of our thoughts about Super Week, coming out of it, our expectations of going to playoffs, although we'll go a bit harder on that in our next episode. There were a lot of questions for us about CJ, and as they always have been, in 2020, they were arguably even more coin flip than they are right now, because their early game was so poor. CGA have all of the abilities to take games to Rascal Jester, to DFM, to all of these teams which we consider the powerhouses in this region. Oh, God, take so much damage. Gonna go back to the roots.
Oh no, Glacial Fissure knocks up 2. Oh, this is a disaster for the CGA bot lane. A quick simple dive, and no one from Sengoku dies. What masterful aggro juggling.
Clean enough to eat your dinner off of, and they eat up the bot lane, just as we talk about CGA coin flipping and maybe having the power to go toe-to-toe with the best teams. Well, one of the lowest teams in our region takes a huge advantage over them in the bot side of the map. And you're right, this is actually quite a difficult game for CGA in terms of what they want to be achieving going into playoffs, going into one of these teams that they have been so close to before. We've already talked poems and riddles and stories about how many different tiebreaker scenarios we have, and this is now a team which is losing to teams outside of even those brackets. Okay, all the damage onto Gango is great hit, that's awesome, but when you land the Graviton procs, actually even just the proc of it is enough to get, you know, an auto's worth of damage without also having the ult damage factored into that too. It's enough to have Crash clean up house. And Ramon, of course, he was there.
Yeah, the coordinated dive doesn't help either. Doesn't hurt, I should say, either in that situation. It looks really nice there. And now Sengoku can say, well, bottom lane is now missing a turret here. The third dragon is spawning in 33 seconds, and Sengoku are in a perfect position to just take it as their own here. And I don't know if CGA can safely contest this objective without losing multiple members.
But what do they do except contest objectives and go for 5v5s? You're looking for the Rakana to Misfortune Ultimus. You're looking for Olaf and everyone else to find themselves big team fight plays. If you don't have the goal to fight them now, well, when is that going to happen? You're going to do it at Baron? You're on blue side. It's actually harder to go contest Baron at that point because you can't ult over the wall as the Misfortune, which has been something which Milan has done several times this split to great effect. I think they have to fight even though it's disadvantageous.
Well, it looks like they are listening to your advice in America. Even dropping their Herald to try and help out, get some pressure in that middle area. Paz pushing on the top side, but of course Nap in the bottom as both teams rotate to the middle lane. And that early TP will come through. It's not going to stop the charge, but Paz will be around and available as CGA continue posturing here. But they're in a choke point. NT could look for something. Oh, feeling it as the chakrams come up from Gango, and CJ have to be so afraid now with the combination Gango is running if they commit to the fight.
Well, that's one of the really big problems now, because you cannot approach NFLs with that amount of chakrams. It doesn't end up refreshing them when you auto-attack a epic monster now. He has to sack him up again. They're going for the fight.
Yeah. Bullet time not really connecting on any priority members here, and now CGA are divided, and they will be conquered from the flank from Sengoku there. They will take out the clone. They will be trading their junglers though, but Sengoku actually lost Crash in that exchange there, so forced to give that one up. I didn't even see the Viego drop.
I think you just ended up being a little bit of collateral in there. Just kind of someone who was caught on the fringe of the damage. Of course, the big dive was onto that bot lane. Dragon goes over to CGA. That Brig gives CGA a breath of fresh air, somewhat of a lifeline alongside the slightly won fight. Of course, this starts with a bubble landing onto the Braum, and now the important thing is shield is down for the next couple of seconds. Gango has perfect weapons if they are stacked up. But the stacks fall off, and suddenly it's out there like, okay, he's not behind his front line, he's trying to clear, and it's Crash and NC who are the ones who are really separated off, and the bullet time, though it doesn't get the best damage, does separate away the team long enough for CGA to round up, corral the two members caught towards the bottom, and get something out of it. Ooh, good damage.
Oh, Milan actually could die here. Ramune could just commit to this. Yeah, a couple more hits, and I'm not going to call it a solo kill. NT's existence was very important there, but Milan getting caught out in the middle lane. Nahyun was a solid 5-10 seconds away.
Yeesh. Milan just caught too far forward. You know, we earlier in the day for our stream, we saw We saw Honey's Misfortune get its first win, 0-6 before that point. Elations abound for Misfortune fans. This one is maybe slightly less positive as far as things go at that point. Milan struggling to find ults in team fights, didn't have any pressure in lane, dying solo under mid turret. It's Sengoku, and particularly Ramune here. He's had himself a comfortable game. Of course, it's versus a substitute mid laner, someone coming in on short notice, and then this player in Kaito, of course. But really finding themselves in a comfortable position in this mid game and getting a lot of value for this pick.
Yeah, and we've seen LeBlanc, especially in the last couple of weeks here, really just skyrocket in terms of prioritization as Crash and Enti start up the objective. CGA, oh wait, really nice catch up. They all get the quickening as well. Munine forced to dive over the wall back to the distortion, and Baron is being taken. Finally, CGA realized they've been bamboozled. The glacial vision by the time Enti, they just died to this one. Will he go down? Finally does. But CGA, if they only get one kill, this is fine. Nap will dive in over the wall, finds Paz. TP coming through on the back end, but Paz is trying to get out alive, but the Sleepy Tongue Bubble will finally drop them. 2 members fall, but Baron secured for Sengoku.
It's a Baron, and they still escape with 3, like you're saying. 2 down. Should have been much worse. There was a crucial ult cancel onto Milan midway through that by NC. Gonna see it in the replay. This starts with Ramune. Yes, getting caught, but buying time, buying cooldowns. The Rakan ultimate's no longer there. That's an important part of the combo to keep this enemy team of Sengoku locked in place for long enough. The ultimate coming out of NC. Bit of a prediction, maybe just a bit of a lost mind game there from Milan, who's trying to get some damage across. It would have fired into the shield anyway. Either way, bullet time means functionally nothing in this fight, and Sengoku secure themselves a retreat.
Yeah. Only losing 2 members for the Baron in this situation, I don't think is too bad. With the next dragon spawning in 2 minutes, it gives you really nice ways to push the waves out. Like, this is pretty good for them.
If this was a Baron reset into a dragon, where of course the death timers would mean something, then you start having questions about, well, what's happening with the waves being pushed and stuff like that. CJ haven't managed to get anything out of the 2 kills they have. They haven't got anything out of having more people alive than Sengoku when they were trying to reset. They didn't get themselves a mid out of turret, nor in the bot lane either. So Sengoku survived that phase of play. Now they get to siege in, potentially take this mid lane out of turret. I guess the Misfortune ult doing its thing though.
Yeah, and while Gango does go low, does not go down. And Milan, again, time and time again, this Misfortune build is so centered around that bullet time that when you're forced to use it for the wave clear, because it's a baroned up minion wave, you're not going to have the next team fight coming. Oh my lord, what madness is this? Oh no, you can't jump on top of them, Nahyun! You're just begging to die as Gango snipes out the fleeing Kaito, and those 2 kills are critical to the breaking of the turrets.
Nation try to peel for their mid laner. Probably should have let them go at that point. Doesn't matter that they had flash. They were going to go down at that point. Giving up an extra life allows Sengoku to push in for another turret. Control the map yet again. Take the game into advantage.
Oh no, Casson just forced to run for the hill there. Dodges out the last winter's bite, but even with Casson being alive, with flash, with smite, I'm not so sure the Olaf is going to be allowed to contest this. 10 seconds till Mountain Dragon. This will, of course, only be Dragon number 3 as NT bounces themselves over the wall. And CGA, I'm not so sure they're going to be in a position to contest this, but it looks like they're interested in it.
Because it's what their composition does. If you don't fight here, when are you going to fight? They couldn't do it at Baron. They arrived too late. They don't want to have that happen again at this Mountain Dragon. But it seems like the gold is just really not working in their favor.
Yeah, and they're going to be so careful. Look at Gango's weaponry coming through here as well. Calibran and Infernum. If CJ are going to go soon, because otherwise Calibran just gets all the free poke in the world for Gango. And of course the Infernum, we've all seen what Mr. 200 Years can pull off with that Moonlight Vigil as Ramune setting up on the flank. CGA, they are so low before the fight even begins. And it looks like they're charging forwards. That looks like a Shirelli is being popped down as Ramune jumping in over the wall. Posturing continues. Dragon is just getting pissed off. He wants to kill someone.
Well, so does Paz landing the Shock Blast.
Yeah, getting down low, Dragon will be secured there by Crash, and now CGA are forced to scatter. Nahum dives into the backline, but already gone as Sengoku are diving on top of. Oh, Milan couldn't do anything. Second, you channel the bullet time. You're a stationary target as Sengoku are running over CGA. They may not be able to make it to playoffs, but they're certainly gonna take down what they can. CGA get aced, and Paz is on the line to break open the inhibitors.
I think that's going to be the straw which breaks CGA's back. They try once again to compete at the objective where, as you rightly said, they probably weren't favored. I think they felt rabbit-holed, or pigeonholed rather, into that aspect of their composition, because they realized, hang on, if we don't fight here, what do? We've seen CJ coin flip around those kind of plays before. Not to happen this time. CJ try and stick together, strengthen numbers. Well, to a certain extent, it also is just a shooting gallery for Paz and also for Ramune. You can see that even Kaito sat here, not firing bubbles forwards, but to the side, trying to peel away the LeBlanc. All the while, LeBlanc is actually jumping in and getting damage themselves. We saw that Gango, of course, had the Calibrum at the start of the fight, goes through that ammunition to get themselves a Gravitum. This is the key play here, though. Gets the root. After that comes down, even the damage alongside that, it sets up the fight for success.
And poor Milan there, the second this misfortune stands still to try and pop that ultimate, dunked on by Paz on this, they call it the Graves, the Jace there. And that's not even taking NT Shield into account, which I think did get thrown up when the bullet time came out there. So Milan having a really rough game on this misfortune where it feels like he's not allowed to set up, right? You need those choke points for the misfortune, and it's just he's not being given any good opening to drop the bullet time and really have that team fight impact you need out of the likes of a misfortune.
And by the way, still not got a mythic on Milan because they've had to stop off with the Hextech Chainsword because they sat there just thinking, oh, no one else could really get themselves anti-heal at this point. I guess I'm applying it. I guess I have to use it. It's a really sad situation for the misfortune. They're doing minimal impact on these fights. They're not scaling up in a way that certainly this Aphelios has. He's felt the even had they have the extra gold to go towards a wit's end instead of something a little more damage efficient, they have themselves so much damage to work with. Sengoku in a very calm state of affairs.
Yeah, but they might be in a choke point. This could be a problem if Sengoku get caught up. I mean, that visual lands on multiple members. Gango has all the chakrams, and the bullet time gets interrupted again. There is nothing they can do as Gango is going to start tearing apart. Nab did get access to the backline, but a full ring is more than enough. CGA now forced to flee from the fight there. They do try and turn it around in a scrappy fight. Crash looking for their next victim. Bubble time comes through, but it will not save the CGA replacement mid laner, as now Paz says, hey, Nap, you remember laning phase when you bullied the hell out of me? Here's a little bit of payback, buddy. You can run, but I'm getting my kill in.
Yeah, Sengoku start off their final week, their last two games with a bang, with a statement saying, hey, we are actually playoffs caliber. You won't see us there. For CGA, you're going to have to sort out your shop.
Yeah, CGA, I mean, you can't imagine to be happy about the game CGA performed, but you do have to remember that they weren't rocking their traditional support, right? They pulled in their replacement mid laner coming into it, and of course they did have Nahum down in the bottom lane looking after Milan on the Rakan. So, sure, not CGA firing on all strengths, but there were a few critical things that we can talk about. But before we talk about them, guys, we're going to a short break, but when we come back, we take a closer look at the game that we've just witnessed. And welcome back, guys, to the LJLOU. Of course, still midnight, still my mirror, looking at the game we just had the pleasure of casting. Sengoku versing off against CGA. Now, not the result we expected coming into this game, even though CGA were rocking, of course, a new mid laner to fill in,
Yeah.
and of course, Nathan was down support role. But there were a few things where CGA, I'm going to say, failed to impress. And I'm not talking about their lineup. I'm talking about the draft is where I think we have a bone to pick.
So maybe some of this is due to playing around a new mid laner that only has practiced certain picks with this roster, right? We saw this very early third lock-in of the Zoe, and then afterwards we had, like there was an Olaf and a Misfortune. You say, okay, you've got everything locked down into this last pick, so last pick in a support, and you think you need something to enable like Olaf or something to enable the Misfortune. If you don't have something to speed up the Olaf, allow him to enter that fight, allow him to stay healthy in the fight to work through his healing, what are you picking the Olaf for? If you don't have anything to actually set up a combo for Misfortune, what are you picking Misfortune for? And that's when you really think, oh, it'd be really nice to have a Karma or something to speed up the Olaf. Maybe something like an Orianna with the distance. It'd be also really good to add in some wombo for the Misfortune, like Shockwave. Oh wait, so actually, if you just pick the Orianna, you're much happier in all accounts. I know that mages have been falling out of the accepted meta by some means, but that's just a bit of a sad situation for CGA, because it felt like they put themselves into a real ditch for their last pick, and it didn't really work out for them.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say I think I've said quite a bit about the MF and how I wasn't a fan of the MF to begin with, and then the build Milan chose to go for, I think it was quite clear that it really struggled against the amount of dive they had onto the likes of the MF. But the other champion that I do kind of want to talk about quite a bit is the Olaf picking. Now, as you said, Dimera, you need setup for the Olaf. You need to draft around the Olaf. Olaf can't just be dropped in like a coin in a slot machine. But the most heartbreaking thing about the Olaf is you have to snowball. There's no two ways about that. You have to get an advantage. You have to be the one starting the objectives, like the dragons, the Rift Heralds. You have to be doing that and getting an advantage. Otherwise, the Olaf isn't able to provide much come the late game. Like, I'm sure people remember when Olaf first item redemption was a thing. Right? That sums up where Olaf's existence is. He scales so poorly, people bought a redemption as the first item coming into him. Not health, not damage,
Tarzan
redemption.
A master of Olaf builds at that point. That was a fun time.
So to see the Olaf locked in and then not utilized correctly, it's just heartbreaking. Like, if we ignore the drafting issue, again, the Orianna you talked about already, the fact we could have loved an enchanter there is great. But if we're locking in Olaf, Cassin just doesn't perform on the Olaf. I think if you give him something a bit more well-rounded, like maybe this is out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, Jinzao was pretty much always going to be banned at that point. It's the high ban. But like, I feel like that one of their other problems was that, of course, that they had so many AD jungles banned away, so they felt like they had to go for the Olaf. But at that point, why are you banning away Lee Sin yourself? No, there's so many different other things that it feels like this is a problem they created for themselves. They didn't have an out-to-go answer for the problem that they created, and then that was kind of lights out from that. So CGA gonna have to really, kind of clean up shop and figure out what they're gonna do in this next game, their last game.
Yeah, and hopefully, I think the big thing is just the drafting. Okay, we can accept that, again, we talked about there will be synergy issues with Nahum down in the bottom lane and a new mid laner in, and yes, there may be some oddities, but when it comes to drafting everything other than the mid laner, there's less excuses. Less like, oh, this is why this is a... Yeah, there's an excuse for stuff like that. So hopefully they will fix that up. I have faith that that will be tightened up. But I think the heartbreaking thing of this number is, despite talking about how all these little edits that CGA can make, we're not the ones casting it.
No, we're not. Although it has been absolute pleasure to cast with you again. Of course, got our cast together at the end of the split. We're going to be handing over to Initialize and Mass One, who are like there and there, by the way. That's why we've got them set up today. So you'll be enjoying their faces and voices a little bit later.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of a good wrap, I think, for taking a look at CGA and, of course, Sengoku. But again, CGA's run is not yet over. Will they make a bounce back or not? Well, that's not for me to tell you. That's for Master Swan and Initialized. So, guys, on that note, thanks for watching the first game of Back to the Blast from the Past. And when the LJLOU comes back, it will be the next game, which it's CGA versus, I can find it.
Rascal Jester.
Rascal Jester, there you go. Nailed it. Totally didn't look at the schedule for that one. So guys, don't go anywhere. The LJLOU. We'll be right back.